Denise Gwen, reading aloud for you from my novel, His Christmas Eve Proposal, Book 3 in the Medicine Women of Alaska, Chapter 39. His heart lighter, he went in search of Paul. He arrived at the ICU, called in at the telephone box in the waiting room, and a nurse appeared and escorted him to the nursing station. It was a beautiful setup, with the nursing station in the center and the patient room circling it like spokes in a bike. He saw Paul and went to hug him. "What took you so long?" Paul asked. "That's some welcome. I'm just jerking your chain." "Just like my ex," Drew said and chuckled. "Saw her, huh?" "Yup, same old Danielle. But I'm a different man." "To be honest," Paul said, "I figured you wouldn't show up for another couple of hours as devoted as you are to your practice." Drew shrugged. "Same as you, bro." "No, not the same," Paul said. "You're devoted to Dad's practice. I'm devoted to the mountains." "Do you feel safe enough to leave Ricardo Velazquez alone with the inferior doctors of Anchorage, Alaska?" Drew asked jokingly, referring to the vigil Paul had been keeping over the sick man's care. "If by inferior, are you by chance referencing your ex-wife?" Paul said. "So we're discussing her again? I like to jerk your chain, remember?" "Yes, I remember," Drew shrugged. "She's not bad, actually. We talked briefly." "She does improve with time, doesn't she?" Paul said. "Come on, you ready?" "Yes, let's go." He grabbed his haversack from behind the nurse's station, and together the two brothers walked out of the hospital and to the parking lot. "What's up with you anyway?" Paul asked. "Oh, nothing," Drew said glumly. "It doesn't perchance have anything to do with seeing your ex-wife?" "Nope, not even close. I just figured since there's a certain kind of joy dripping off of you." "Uh-huh. Anyway, you seem a little off." Drew said. He unlocked the car, and Paul threw his haversack into the back and climbed in, but registered a moment's surprise when Drew didn't start the truck immediately. "What's up?" Paul asked. Drew clutched the steering wheel as if it perhaps might give him strength. "Look, yes, I'm a little bit mad, but it really doesn't have anything to do with Danielle, although she did say something snide." "What'd she say?" Paul asked. "Well, she mentioned how I'll never change." "Hey," Paul said, "I didn't make you take over Dad's practice. You did that on your own." And there it was, the flash of anger. He turned to stare at his brother. "Did I, Paul? Really?" "Yes," Paul said evenly, "you did." "How exactly do you figure that when you never really gave me the option of saying whether I wanted it or not?" "I never forced it on you." "Actually, Paul, you did." Paul reared his head back in anger. "You scampered off to work overseas with the Army, and when you came back, you wouldn't even consider coming into the practice and helping out. You just dumped it all on my lap." And just like that, Drew's unspoken resentment from all the past years came flowing out. And it wasn't until he'd spoken these words that he realized how angry and resentful he'd felt. Paul gazed at him for a long moment, then looked away. "Okay, well, I guess I didn't know how angry you were about it." "Dad wanted to retire. He'd been diagnosed with cancer. You were nowhere in sight. and I felt obligated to run the practice for him. You have no idea how much it meant to him, Paul." "You didn't have to run Dad's practice for him," Paul said. "Dad never put that kind of pressure on us." "Perhaps not, but I always knew what he really wanted." "Knowing what your father's dream is for you and following your own dreams can sometimes be two different things," Paul pointed out. Drew slammed his hands on the steering wheel. "Damn it, Paul!" Paul jumped, startled. "I did what was right, not what I wanted to do, but what was right for the family, for the Rutherford name, while you went off and did your own thing." Paul let a long silence fill the space between them, then fetched a heavy sigh. "I had no idea you were so resentful, Drew. I had no idea." Sometimes doing the honorable thing is more important than doing what you want to do with your life. "Drew," Paul said gently, "I don't agree with that statement. I know it's the kind of thing Dad would have said, and you always were his favorite boy." Drew stared with surprise as Paul looked out the window, attempting to compose himself. "It's always been weird to me growing up, because as the eldest son, I was supposed to be the responsible one, the one that everybody could count on, and I was anything but." "Yes," Drew said, "that's true. And you were always the one who did what was right. You were the Cub Scout. You were the Boy Scout. You're the one who got his eagle, and then you got your wings." Drew said nothing. Paul spoke slowly. "I think you and I got trapped into these separate roles, and we let them define us. You were the dependable one, and you lost out because Dad then turned around and expected you to carry on the family name. Heck, he assumed it, really. He did. You kept your nose to the grindstone and worked your ass off, and now you've got this successful family practice. But ever since Danielle left, I can tell your heart's not in it anymore. Maybe your heart hasn't been in it for a long time, but all I know is you've been unhappy. I think you're right. You're stuck in this rut. You're afraid of change, and the world is changing all the time. You're getting left behind. Pretty harsh words for a guy who nearly flunked out of high school. Come on, Drew. You need to change. If you want to be happy, you've got to make some changes in your life. And for the first time in your life, Drew, I'm challenging you. To do what? To do something that you absolutely want, Paul said. You need to follow what your heart's telling you to do. Drew shook his head. No, can't do it. Paul didn't answer, but then the idea flitted into Drew's head as the two brothers sat there. Why couldn't he follow his heart? What was stopping him? Who cared if the Rutherford family name got retired? Dad and his grandfather were long gone, and there was nobody in the family who'd care if Drew decided to sell his practice. There were lots of new doctors who'd be arriving in this remote area soon. People connected with the hotel and spa. People seeking a quiet respite from the hurly-burly of life in the lower 49. He'd sell the practice and follow Naomi wherever she went. And then Paul said the words that Drew realized he needed to hear. If you don't make a change and go after that girl, she'll leave your life and never come back. Then you'll spend the rest of your life regretting that loss and asking yourself what your life might have been like had you only said yes. Drew had to really think on this. He loved his life in Gnometown. He loved the peacefulness of the town. He loved the ruggedly beautiful landscape. He loved his cozy log cabin home. But he could always build a new log cabin somewhere else. And he didn't share this with Paul, but someone had already noticed his property and made an offer on it that was staggering. Drew had no idea his property was worth that much. If he sold his house, he'd have a nice little nest egg to keep him going until he started a new job elsewhere. He loved Gnometown, but he loved Naomi more. He needed to find her and let her know exactly how he felt about her. And he needed to do it now.